Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Prepper Podcast. And I'm joined for the first time on the podcast by two people at once. And this is Vic and Camilla. It's a pleasure to have you guys with us. How are you doing?
Hi there.
Great, thanks. Great.
Excellent. Right. I mean, it's really good to meet a prepping couple. Most of the people I speak to, including myself, obviously I talk to myself, but it's usually one person. You know, it's usually one person's the focal point of the prepping and the other person's just, putting up with it. Is that the case for you guys? Or are you both really into the kind of lifestyle?
We're both into this, but we come at it from different angles. There are skills that Camilla has brought to the relationship and to our prepping world that I didn't have, and there's skills that I bring that she hasn't had. So it's something we've become a happy fusion of skills.
And I was into it way before I met.
Oh, really? Okay. So did you pull him into it more than Camilla? Did you pull him more into it?
I think it's something as the relationship developed. You start off with common ground anyway in a relationship, and we saw the world through the same eyes. We saw the same problems that were happening, and we had the same desires, which was to move out of when we met, to move out of the London area, to move to a small rural village, to become more self-sufficient. Okay, there was that, but then there was other things we looked at together and thought, well, we need to do something about this. We look around the world, we see how things are going. One of the great things I got from Camilla that I'm absolutely rubbish at myself is plants. She can walk, we can go on a walk down a country lane or through a meadow, and she can go, you can eat that, can't eat that, but that makes a good tea. So basically going for a walk with her as an education. She's also so much more into the whole food growing thing, and not 1 inch of the garden space is wasted. Everything has a purpose. We don't grow anything that we don't eat or hasn't got spiky thorns on it for protection either.
That's great. I mean, I think that's the route a lot of people want to go down if you've got the space, the self-sufficiency route. So, I mean, I ask this question to everybody that comes on, and it might sound weird because we've already been talking, but do you class yourself as a prepper? Because it's got a lot of connotations, the word, Yeah?
Yeah.
And so to us, that means... Sorry, go ahead.
You've no reservations with that then?
No, not at all. We are prepared. We're people who are prepared for things that might hit our society, the village where we live, or wider, whether socio-economic, where we can actually say we're not going to starve and we're not going to be taken advantage of. And if, God forbid, one of us gets hurt or one of our neighbours gets hurt, we can help each other.
Yeah, that's what I like as well.
If there's extreme weather, if there's power outages, I mean, we learnt our lessons soon after we moved here, but there was often power cuts rurally, and at the time we were still waiting to have a solid fuel burner put in.
Yeah,
we ended up driving out to a pub to keep warm. And now we've got that, we cook on it. It's absolutely vital. It's absolutely vital. I think that everybody has some way of not relying on electricity, and a mixture of ways.
Yeah, I mean,
we're in a rural.
Go ahead.
So we're in a rural West Country village, and when the winds hit, the only form of power in here, there's no gas or anything like that. It's only electricity, and when that goes down, it's normally some hours and sometimes a day or so before the electricity gets back up again.
Yeah, I lived in North Wales in a small mining town. I've felt that pain. I know exactly what you're on about. So, I mean, that's the kind of prepping that, I mean, I encourage with people that are not preppers, like the day-to-day stuff. They might have a power cut for a short period and things like that. But as preppers, usually we're looking at a bigger picture. What do you guys, I mean, what are your guys' main focuses when it comes to prepping? I mean, myself, I'll open up to you guys, is I monitor the sun for CMEs, and I think whether it's an EMP or a CME or something like that, it's all about the loss of power, the grid going down, that kind of supply chain that's what I'm prepping for if I'm asked. What's your guys' main focus?
Well, for me, and I don't know whether you would agree with this, please coming after me. That's a natural disaster or a solar disaster which affects the grid out. Now, there's two other things that come in. We're living in an age, most of my work had always been in defence and security before I retired. And we're living in an age now whereby a terrorist would only have to hit a major import structure like a port, and we're out of food. Fuel will rocket if a fuel terminal's been hit. You can see how globally what happens with the price of fuel and the movement of food. But if that was to be hit in the UK, and this is something that there's a lot of concern about, it would spread panic. And on the subject of panic, one thing that really woke me up to this was the 2011 or the 2012 riots. I think they were called the Sean Duggan riots. Somebody being shot by the police. In London, we were seeing areas then, and we had friends who said, we're in a gated community, we're staying behind it because we can't go out, because we would just be prey if we're going out. That was a real awakening to us, and that's what made us say, well, it's about time we looked at moving out rurally, selling up in London and moving out to the countryside. That was one great big worry as well, how people would behave. It's not just how weather and the solar behaves, it's how people behave as well. What do you say?
Yeah, I think other people are the biggest threat. We'll often be walking around a supermarket, we'll be in a pub, in a cafe, and we'll look, say, at a couple of families on tables near us, and we think, God, how on earth would they behave if all of a sudden, after 2 or 3 days, there was no food, no electricity? They'd be coming knocking on everybody's door saying, look, I've got kids. And not actually preparing. Also, a lot of people, and we've got a few friends like this, they probably have 2 days food in the cupboard and fridge, if that.
Yeah.
Which we were brought up by parents that were of a generation that you were always prepared. You always had emergency food in the cupboard. You always had candles. You always had hot water bottles and blankets. And I think it's absolutely awful that people aren't actually really taught this in school. Just the basics. It's just common sense. It's just absolutely common sense. I mean, I hope with the power cuts and with the COVID thing that maybe it's woken a few people up. I think it has. But not enough people, definitely.
I think it has, because you do see an increase in the community. It's less of a taboo than it was. I don't know if you guys have found the same, but I've had friends. If I'd have said like about what I do to friends 10 years ago, that have thought I was crazy and just wrote me off as tinfoil hat. But since the pandemic, since they saw how quickly a supermarket can empty, now I explain to them what I'm doing. They're like, yeah, I get it. I'm not saying they go out and do the same, but maybe it lets them think about it. But yeah, the whole food supply thing is just insane how quickly it can go down.
On that subject, I've said little things to friends that they can take on board. Like, you're in a car, something like 7/7, you remember the 7th of July, and it's gridlocked. Right? You're going to have to get out. At one point, you're going to have to rely on Shanks's pony. Keep a pair of walking boots or trail shoes in the car that you can put on, and take off your high heels or your office brogues, and do little things like that. Also, just keep things in the car. Now, just a quickie here. In my car, I keep a mess tin, and you're not too far from food in the UK. But one thing that you might get stuck at if you're left for hours while waiting for a breakdown recovery is drinks. So I keep a few sachet drinks in here: tea, coffee, sugar, hot chocolate, and I have a small burner. So even if I was broke down at the side of the motorway, I could make myself a brew and hydrate while I'm waiting for rescue.
And 2 litres of water always.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's a big mistake so many people make. They don't always carry water with them, or something that they can put water in if they get to a source. That's a big mistake I think a lot of people make. I mean, even when we broke down that time years and years ago on the way down to the south coast, it was just brilliant to be able to have all that with us while we were actually waiting for the breakdown people.
Yeah,
really brilliant. It made all the difference from it being a horrible experience to a sort of, oh well, that's all right, a breakdown person would be here soon.
Yeah, I've always kind of preached that one and then not really done it. I've got my Bugout bag, I've got my stuff at home, but it's so easy to just jump in the car and off you go. And it actually took me, when I started the channel, I thought, right, I need to do this. And I built a bag, and it's got a similar sort of setup to yourself with the burner, the stove, and, you know, everything like that. But I've also got a couple of the ReadyWise meals. So there is a bit of food in there as well, some protein bars. So I've kind of done that with all the water. And then even if we go longer journeys, I've made the kids their own little bag, which is not really a survival bag, but it makes them feel involved. They've got an emergency drink in there if they need it. Ideally, they don't drink because they'll have to stop every 2 minutes. But, so yeah, it's kind of getting into the habit of that. And it's great. It sounds weird, but it is great when something like that happens and it justifies it. Because in your head, you're like, oh my God, this was a good idea. I'm so glad we did this. Because like you say, when you broke down, it kind of justified it in a way, and it gives you a way to explain it to other people as well.
Yeah, we also, as I said, that power cut that we had when we first moved here, it made us think, right, we need to have a box that we can find quickly that has the little gas burner on that we use for camping and cooking. It's just one of those cartridge boxes, but we have the other ones as well for torches, for anything like that we could possibly need, because we weren't really prepared when it happened. To be fair, we haven't been here very long when it did happen. So now we know exactly where that box is. So God forbid, if for some reason we couldn't find matches, candles, light, we could virtually grope our way to the box to get everything we needed. And the other thing that's whereby are these Olight rechargeable lanterns that actually charge up your mobile phone as well. They've got the USB.
That's one thing. Everything we have, we always think one item, two uses.
Yeah.
What other uses can you use an item for?
Because space is always a premium for the majority of people.
Yeah, see, I don't have the benefit of like a wood burning stove or anything like that. So I do have the little gas cooker, but I exchange my, like your electric lantern there, I've got the old paraffin ones. And I've got like containers of paraffins, because that's not just the light, that's the heat you get off them as well. So they're quite good like that. But yeah, it's about adapting to your own situation as well. So can I ask you guys... You guys mentioned the garden, and obviously, and I mean, I love the fact that you can go on a walk and pick something and eat it. I've just got a book sent off a subscriber that's like how to eat for free, and it's a mini book, and it's just all about the plants you can find and what you can use them for, which is cool. But how self-sufficient do you think you guys are? If it was a case of the supply chain's gone, could you eat with what you've got, or is there plans to make that bigger?
There's plans to make it bigger. We would be able to eat for a short while with what we've got. Our main problem now is there was a long-term problem. We would then have to rely on our stores before the whole cycle of the year comes around. And that's when I think we would start getting difficulty. What do you think?
Yeah, probably. I mean, it's difficult to say, to be quite honest, of how much more you would eat or how much less you'd eat. I think our main issue would be fresh water. And I think that's a really, really key one for most people, because all it takes is a cyber attack for all the computerized network that makes the water system work, because people forget that it's all computerized, for there not to be fresh drinking water anymore. Love to be in a place where we had a well, where we could, or to have a well, but I think that's the main issue. We
have got the advantage that when we bought this house, there's a creek about 300 meters from here. Okay, you know, it's what we have got. If I could just move ourselves over here, we bought a big filtration system here. We've got millbank bags and things like that to filter it through, but to actually filter any impurities, heavy metals out, we've got this baby here, the Ive water filter. And the idea is you fill it up, it filters through an internal filter there, which takes out some very small microbial problems, and then you get fresh water out of it. Now, obviously, we've also got thousands of those army water purification pills as well. But yeah, water. Yeah.
I mean,
really doesn't.
I thought I had some up here because literally I can't turn anything over in my house without finding a sachet of them. I've got them everywhere. Have you looked at rainwater collection?
Yeah, we're great believers in going on FreeCycle and Marketplace for just stuff people are getting rid of. So we already had one rain barrel. We've now got 4, and we probably get another one as well. So yeah, because obviously water in most places is also metered, so it costs money. So I prefer to use it, and it's better for the plants to use the rainwater for that. So but ideally, if you're in a position where you can actually have a well drilled on your property, we looked at it, but we're too high up, it's too expensive. But depending on where you are, I think that's a must for most people.
I think with a good amount of rainwater collection in this country, generally, we don't have a dry period for very long. Most of the time, it's raining at some point in this country. I mean, you talk about the barrels on FreeCycle and things. I've got you can just about see the top of it there. I've got these big blue barrels. I found a spice wholesaler who sells wholesale spices to Indian restaurants, stuff like that. And that's what it comes in, and they serve it all out. Then they're just blasted and jet washed, and he just didn't know what to do with them. So I'm collecting them from him. And
now that's a very good idea.
Yeah, and he even does the smaller ones.
Excellent.
So, I mean, it's a case of one man's trash is another man's treasure, right?
It's amazing what people got rid of. We've got so much stuff over the years from FreeCycle that even people just saying, "Look, I'm giving away a load of free wood," which is just fabulous. The other thing, talking about things like burning and cooking and water, rocket stove, and Kelly kettle, we've got those as well.
Kelly kettle.
Absolutely key to have something like that, because if for some reason you can't get any more gas, or you need to be a little bit more stealthy instead of using a wood burner, then you've got that to actually cook on and sterilize water if you haven't got anything else.
Yeah. The good thing about the Kelly kettle is, if you're anything like me, I find it really difficult to get a fire going out, because most of the time there's damp wood in this country. Yeah. With the Kelly kettle, once you get it going and you're feeding it, the air induction heats up the rest of the wood and burns even sodden stuff.
Yeah, there's some great tools out there. And like I say, practice makes perfect. If you get these things like a Kelly kettle, the key is to use it right and test it and make sure you're comfortable with it before you're thrown into a situation where you have to. So yeah, I like that. Can I ask you, are you guys so this is another question that kind of goes out to a lot of people that come on here. Are you guys I don't think you are, the vibe I get, but are you guys of the lone wolf mentality, or are you looking at bigger community, like kind of, I know there's a mixture between, and you're always going to look for yourself first, but I've got my preps now to a level where I'm like, my family's comfortable up to a certain point. I'm now starting prepping for where I can make a meal to feed the local people if I have to, and help out that way and stuff like that. Where are you guys at with like mags and things like that?
The position of our first position in taking prepping seriously was to move out to a rural farming community. We have, without broadcasting it, we have made our contacts out here amongst other people who are like-minded, who could probably dress a pheasant, get some venison, farmers with lots of different connections, that type of thing. We are of the bit where we could actually become a useful part of that community. I'm not of the position yet where I could actually open a soup kitchen and feed everybody who hasn't prepared. Nor would I be prepared to do that.
Right, so kind of in the middle, yeah. But I mean, you're probably right. You're in a much better position there, where you're surrounded by country folk, as it were, because I mean, in the center of London, you're not going to know who to trust, who can do what, and it's going to be a very difficult situation. So you kind of helped yourself there in a way. But does that come into a plan? So if something happened tomorrow, for example, do you know you could still contact this person, this person, this person, you could get together? Or is it just a case of carry on where you are as you are?
I think with the few years we've been here, we've kind of scoped out who we could, shall we say, trust. But we know they could help us and they could help that, vice versa. But that said, the problem is when you get into that, you get the kind of like, oh yes, but then there's my sister-in-law and she's coming to stay, and then there's my boyfriend and he's coming to stay, and you're like, I don't know. I think there's quite a lot to be said to keeping yourself to yourself and not saying too much about how much you have, because at the end of the day, there is always going to be that individual or that unfortunately group of people who will want to come round and take what you have. Yeah,
obviously, and as preppers, we don't need to go into detail, but as preppers, we all take security very seriously. I mean, I get critiqued for the fact I broadcast on YouTube. But I mean, if you think that I'm sharing everything and, I'm not holding my own stuff back and my own plans back, then that's on you. But it's not the case. It's a case of I'm sharing because every one person that preps that wasn't prepping before, who starts prepping, helps everyone else out because it's less of a drain.
It's a mindset as well. I mean, when we've looked in situations around the world, those people who have prepped, and when society starts to reform, law and order comes in, I don't know, the UN lands with airplanes and doshes out food. It's the people who prepped that they look to be leaders of small communities. Yeah. I spent some time in, we do a lot of travel, which is being an eye-opener. Israel. Almost everybody that lives in Israel is a prepper. Obviously, they have issues with kind of ongoing conflicts, but they realise as well that they used to be surrounded, not so much now, but they used to be completely surrounded by hostile countries. They would have to rely on everything for themselves. The water was going to be desalinated from the sea. The food was going to have to be grown, and that's why the kibbutz system worked so well while they were under that much of a threat. Not so much, well, say not so much now, but with the first formation of the state, they had to think how we're going to get a communal food source going if we are completely sealed off. Other places we go, we love going to Eastern Europe, Slovenia, Croatia, Lithuania, Bulgaria. People there still forage. And it's quite normal for children to be brought up, being taken out by the grandparents and shown what plants they can eat. There's still much more of an agricultural mentality, and that like the keeping of chickens and things like that, than there is in this country.
Even the smallest garden has vegetables growing and an apple tree or something like that. I mean, can you imagine if everybody just did that? Instead of planting flowers and evergreens and these no-mow lawns, what difference that would make. Plastic
lawns and out there with the Dyson Hoover hoovering the lawn. Yeah, it's madness. But it's crazy because we were like that. It may have took Dig for Victory as a campaign for the World War II that people were planting their own veg and necessity because of rationing. And it's horrible to think that it would take something like that to get us there again. But I do feel the more you look at, obviously, the conflict with Russia and the threat there to the Baltics, you see more and more of these countries are preparing all the way down. Like there are some of them are to extreme where they've all got their own bunkers. Some of them are just saying you need to be ready. You need to have 30 days of food. It feels like in this country we have our head in the sand. Am I wrong? It feels like there's a lot of awake people in this country, but none of them are in charge. We seem to be just thinking, "Oh, we'll be okay," and that's it.
We're too we're too diverse of thought. People, as soon as that's brought up, it's the government. What you're not going to look after us. You're throwing us out there. What are you trying to do? Are you trying to? Will you be cutting off my universal credit and say that I have to grow my own food? I think we're extremely large in population, and we're too diverse of thought for people to have a single coherent structure. Take Switzerland. Switzerland, not a big population, but every man at home and many women as well has a rifle and some ammunition that's sealed. They're not allowed to go into it because it's checked in case they get invaded. There are communal shelters in case there's a nuclear attack. A small population, and this is why we find a small population even in a large country town, you are always no more than about 60 degrees of separation from somebody else. So somebody knows somebody that you know that they know. So you tend to pull together more. Huge cities of 5, 6, 7, 8 million. No, it will turn into a complete apocalypse.
Yeah. I find that frightening, the idea of being, say, stuck in a city if the grid went down even for 5 days or something. I just can't even begin to imagine how horrifying that would be.
Here, when the power goes out, we get people knocking on elderly people's doors saying, "Are you all right? Do you want to come in? Are you okay?" And we've all got a little Facebook group for the village, and people are on there kind of communicating, does anybody need this, anybody need that, and also getting an information about how long the power outage is going to be there.
I mean, and that we've lost that, haven't we, in bigger places? We've lost that, and it's ironic that they have programs on the TV like Coronation Street, which is based in the northwest where I'm from, and it's a street outside of Manchester, and they all know each other's names, and they all go in each other's. It doesn't happen. That does not happen anywhere. Not here anyway. So yeah, it's. I mean, it almost sells emigration to me sometimes. It really does, because I feel like I wrote to every political party. Now, I'm not biased one way or the other. I vote for policies. If somebody comes in with a good idea, they'll get my vote. Simple as that. I'm not biased in one direction or the other. But I wrote to every single political party, local MPs and at the national level, to ask what's our plan after the deterrent of Trident doesn't work. No answers from any of them. Nothing. There's no answer for it.
That's a pity, because when I was working for the Ministry of Defence, everything was all on about resilience, protection of national infrastructure. So it seems something at governmental level people are banging on about, and in government organisations, but it's not filtering out to the general population.
No.
Probably they think, well, we'll be scaring the general population if we tell them what to do if there's a massive power outage, if there's a nuclear strike. Keep them ignorant.
That doesn't work, though. They surely know that doesn't work, because when we had the pandemic, as soon as people did realize something was going on, what did we see? We saw panic buying, we saw chaos, we saw people fighting over TVs, and it's like, TV's not going to help you right now. It's absolutely insane, because it's all right, I don't want to scare the population, but just help them, just let them be prepared. Here's a simple advisory pamphlet of, we suggest you keep 10 days worth of food, water, and candles. Something like that would at least alleviate a lot of other people.
Yeah,
it would alleviate people trying to break into your house, or turning savage to get food.
Which, I'm sorry, it doesn't take. That doesn't take the end of the world. Look at the cost of living. Crime rate's going to go up with that anyway. So it doesn't take this black swan event for that to happen. It's slowly getting worse in that way. I'm thinking of security and family security now, not after it hits the fan. I'm thinking if somebody comes to try and take this now, it's insane. It really is. I feel like we're the most underprepared country in the EU. I'm going on a rant here. This is not even.
No. This is the whole point of your great podcast and channel, is that these things can be raised. And sure, we can go onto YouTube and we can see how to make nettle tea, or we can see how to start a fire with a bit of broken glass or something like that. But we need to be talking about the geopolitical situation and our social situations in our community to highlight this.
Yeah, and it's a fine balance of doing that and not becoming a fearmonger. It's not, not saying be afraid, be afraid, be afraid. It's more about, no, you can help yourself in this way, and it's just how you do that that's got to be the one.
Yeah. I always say to people, what we do is we hope for the best, but we prepare for the worst.
Exactly.
Simple as that, which so many preppers actually say. You just absolutely hope that nothing will ever happen. What's the worst that can happen if you have a huge amount of food? You've actually bought it 2 or 3 years before, it's still in date, and you're actually eating it at the prices that it was 2 or 3 years ago.
Which is what we do now.
Which is what we do.
It's cycling through.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you've got to, because I know a lot of people don't do that. It's just like, oh, it's all in my loft or it's in my cellar if they've got lucky enough to have one. But you have to. And it's a pain and it's a lot of lugging around, but you do.
I found out recently when I went into my garage and found out the rats had been having a go at my army rations. It's gone through great big thick silver foil packets, and they gnaw through it. So there we are. Lesson learned. And that again. But I was also saying, one of the best ways you can get in contact with other people and get them on board with this without actually saying prepping is a community group, a community growing group, neighborhood watch. You're going to draw in the type of people thinking like, oh, neighborhood watch, theft, security of our children, that type of thing. Community growing, people be thinking, oh yeah, okay, we're going to think ahead, we're going to think seasonally. Then you're going to meet people there that are going to think beyond the next paycheck, beyond the next time they're going to be around Sainsbury's or Tesco's.
Yeah, definitely. And it's finding them like-minded people without just running around going, hello, everybody, I've got 300 cans of beans and some shotgun ammo. Come and be my friend. So,
books, the how-to books are absolutely essential because everyone is so used to thinking, oh, how do I skin a rabbit? Well, everyone's not used to thinking, how do I skin a rabbit? And looking it up on YouTube, the internet.
Yes. Yeah.
Even if you've done that, you're going to actually remember it if you not need to do it when you're in a bit of a situation, say a year on. No, you're not. Yeah. So I'm a great believer in having a big library of how-tos.
Yeah, keep it in paper, not on the computer.
Always keep it in paper.
Yeah, that's a prep I've started recently. Actually, I did a video on it not so long ago, and I've got some of them just here. This is just the health section of the books, like the family health and stuff like that, medicine and drugs and dosage and stuff like that. And all I could think of was, it's great, the idea of having, I've got a forum now, which is ukprep.co.uk, because some forums I joined, prepper forums, I didn't feel welcomed at all. I'm not going to go into details. So I started my own. It was an easier way to do it. So a few people have been on there, and I was talking about things, and I was talking about mutual assistant groups. And I just kept thinking, well, it's great if we've got a builder, a joiner, a plumber. What if we've not got a doctor? What if we've not got a joiner? What if we've not got... So it's building that library of things, because, you're not going to be able to do perfect dovetail joints, but you might be able to repair your door if you have to, if you've got a guide, It's the mentality I've been brought up with. As soon as you buy a car, you buy the Haynes manual that matches the car. Yeah. So, yeah, I'm a massive believer in that. Couldn't agree with you more on that front. Knowledge is power, definitely.
Yeah. And reading glasses. So many people, even if they don't need them now, will find they need them in the future.
Yeah, old like us, and you just can't see anything.
And you've got this manual of how to do stuff, and your glasses are broken. What are you going to do? We've got lots and lots and lots. They're only £2 or £1 from the pound shop. We've got a huge bag of them.
Food and foraging. I'm kind of trying to. To me, it's a fuzzy green thing without putting the glasses on.
Or when's the expiry date of that? What's the heating restrictions?
I think that's the right mushroom. Well, I get that. That's a brilliant point. It's something I didn't think of. Future medications like that, and like you say, it is a cheap prep. You can get the different various focal simple glasses from pound shops where it's like +5, +10, things like that. So yeah, stocking some of that's a great idea. I mean, yeah, you've helped
and
me
the
there.
magnifying glass for if all else fails, which you can also start a fire with.
Yeah, definitely. I've got one of them. I've got a couple of them for me map reading and stuff like that. But the glasses is a really good shout. I'll avoid it as long as I can.
Including sunglasses.
Yeah.
Because on the rare days where it is really, really bright and sunny, say you're going out hunting a rabbit, let's go back to rabbits, you're going to want your eyes shaded. So if you're looking into the sun, sunglasses, I mean, how many times have we gone in the car and we've got spare pairs in the car now because we've forgotten to take a pair of sunglasses with us, and it's so bright with the sun going in your eyes. I think they're another key. Again, they're a cheap prep, but I think they're absolutely key.
Yeah, and it's crazy because it's little things like that that people won't think of. You guys need to be on the forum giving these suggestions to me.
If I put a question out to you, Michael?
Certainly.
Yeah, my first port of call years ago was the American sites and forums. Some of them are very good, like on YouTube, like City Prepper. We like a lot. The rest of them are kind of like how you're going to store your ammo for your M4 and stuff like that. It's not really relevant to over here. What's your experience been with the American forums, and how do you think we differ? How do we do it better in this country when we're in prepper community?
I think the problem we've got over here is, like you say, a lot of the time our guide has been these American preppers, and there is some good ones, like you say. You mentioned City Prepper. I like Provident Prepper because they have some really practical advice, like building your own water filters and things like that. The Faraday cage model I followed for them. But yeah, when it's suddenly, oh yeah, we've got this 300-acre homestead and this is our gun room and stuff like that, and it starts to go a bit silly like that, it's difficult because you go onto their forums and the advice they're going to give you is more tailored to their environment. I don't think we do it better, but the people that do well in this country are the people that are doing it to their situation, not trying to prep like they're in the deep south of America. You know, they're not. If you start copying them and trying to act like what there is, it's not going to adapt to our situation. You've got to think of our weather. You've got to think of our closeness of population. We don't have a massive wilderness. When people say, I'll just bug out for 3 weeks, you'll bump into 6 people. You're not going to be bugging out on your own. You can't go out into the Alaska wilderness here. It's just not going to happen. So I wouldn't like to say we do things better, but the good preppers in this country, the wise preppers in this country are doing it based on our situation, not just carbon copying what somebody's doing in another country. I don't know if that answers it, but that's my kind of thoughts.
Yeah. One of the first things that struck me when it came to talking about clothing and load carrying equipment, if you have got to move to some different area, or if you get stuck and in a city and you have to leave your car and yomp back, was the Americans one about military rucksacks, military clothing. That's one of the things. I say this as an ex-soldier as well. I would avoid camo like the plague, because the first thing, if you're going to look like, if you look like you're the lone wolf survivor Rambo type, you're likely to get jumped on and mugged because people think you've got good stuff on you, food and a knife and that type of thing.
Yeah.
Second, if there's a group of you wandering around in camo and the situation with the law enforcement has just got a bit iffy and there's some problems, some riots, you're likely to attract the attention of the police if you start looking like a militia group.
Yeah.
I favour Austrian army, ex-army clothing because it's all green.
Yeah.
And wearing that, or maybe a barber, you just look like any other farmer or any other tree surgeon around in this area who might wear all green stuff like that. It doesn't stand out, and at the same time, you could walk into a town and you wouldn't look like Rambo.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, I was in the army as well, and it was quite a while ago. And this may sound familiar if you had a similar sort of thing, but I think one of the first things we were made to watch was regarding when you go on leave, do not wear your uniform, especially in train stations, things like that. I think they called it Shark Watch at the time or something like that. Yes. Yeah.
If you're out social, look out for other people who might be trying to identify military personnel. You're probably the same era as me when the Northern Ireland situation was the big thing before we pre 9/11 and everything that happened with Islamic terrorism from then on.
Yeah, it was definitely pre 9/11. So yeah, probably is exactly the same. I mean, they used the same footage for about 30 years. I think they've only just changed it recently. But yeah, and I'm the same as you. I do have some camo gear, but that's because I do airsoft as a hobby. You know, it's what I do. But yeah, my urban survival thing. I'm about to do a video this month about having to go out for supplies in a situation, even if you don't have to, and about wearing something discreet, you know, this grey man kind of not being noticed as much, you know, so it's all about subtlety like that. So yeah, you guys will probably get away with it more in the country environment, wearing the greens, like you say, whereas even if you were in all green, walking through the middle of the town or the city, people are still going to look at you like, who's he? So it's kind of more blending to your environment, right? So
yeah, I've done some been doing occasionally some work with people who've been in the security field, and they've turned up with like desert or patrol boots on, 511s, and a flight jacket, baseball cap, and wrap round shades. And you think you're trying to look incognito, and you're looking like you're making yourself look like a military contractor.
Yeah, it's just
incognito.
That's the point. Yeah, isn't
I think they're trying to big themselves up.
It's as subtle as the Secret Service in movies where they're holding their earpiece with their shades on and talking into their wrists. I'm just a normal guy. It's fine. So, yeah. Oh, don't. That would be a whole new rant. Don't. Well, I mean, we're probably about time now. It was an absolute pleasure to meet you. I hope you'll come and just have a nosy on the forums at some point as well, and stay in touch that way, because it's all inclusive on there. It's all, you know, it's all free, and it's all just about helping each other. None of this, I've got this one, you've got that one, who's got the bigger thing, you know. It's none of that. It's just all about being inclusive and helping people to be like-minded. So it was a pleasure having you, and thank you for joining me.
Thanks very much. All the best, Michael. Cheers.
Bye.
Thank you.